Hey guys, it's good to be back with you today for our daily devotional. This is actually going to be our last devotional together for the Gospel of Matthew. So, our section for today is going to be Matthew 27, verses 45 through 53. And we're just going to go through this verse by verse. So, starting at verse 45, it says, "Now from the sixth hour there was darkness over all the land until the ninth hour." And which means during the day when it should be the brightest, right? From noon till 3, it wasn't just gloomy, it was complete darkness, as in the darkest part of the night. And there are some who would argue this was due to a solar eclipse, but total darkness from an eclipse lasts anywhere from around 10 seconds to 7 minutes. This was 3 hours. I think it's safe for us to speculate this was a divine darkness. Some scholars actually speculate that it was within this 3 hour period where the Father imputed the sins of his people to his Son. And the sight of this was so repulsive to the Father that he turned away from the Son. The darkness reflects the gravity and depth of what's going on here. Now, as you're watching this devotional, I don't know how many of you have experienced the moment of being with someone as they passed. But I can tell you from my experience that in those last moments, people have no strength. They can't lift their head. They can't lift their arms. They don't even have enough strength to speak. And yet in this moment, Jesus cries out with a loud, authoritative voice saying, "Eloi lama sabachthani," that is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The question we have to ask is, what was behind the agony and strength of that cry? It was the wine of God's wrath poured full strength into the cup of his anger, the undiluted wrath of God, the cup that Jesus asked his Father to let pass from him because he knew what it contained. It was the weight of the fact that God made him who knew no sin to be sin on our behalf. All the sins of those who belong to him, the hell they deserve for eternity, all of it laid upon his head. And lastly, it was the agony of that cry that came from the weight of the unassisted and solitary suffering. It was in his greatest hour of need that Jesus experienced a pain unlike anything he's ever experienced, the Father's abandonment. The very moment Jesus needs encouragement the most. There are no voices that cry out from heaven, only silence. No angels are sent to minister to him. The women who supported him, they're silent. In terror and cowardice, all the disciples have fled. It's at this point Jesus felt disowned by everyone, which means he endured the suffering alone. It wasn't just the weight of the Father's wrath, but it was the absence of the Father in the midst of experiencing his wrath. He was deserted and forsaken by God and man in complete darkness. Can we see the weight of our sin that put him there? And then finally, in verse 50, Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. It was finished. The forsakenness Jesus experienced was complete. And then in verse 51, it says, "Then behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And the earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs were also opened. And many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many." Now the curtain of the temple was thick and heavy, and it separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple. And within Judaism, this was the most sacred place. This is where the ark used to be kept before the Babylonian conquest, and where the high priest would enter once a year on the Day of Atonement to atone for the sins of the people. It was a wall that symbolized separation from God because of our sin. So the tearing of the curtain when Jesus died signified that the Father's wrath against sin was perfectly satisfied by the Son's sacrifice. And the torn veil also signifies Jesus as the new high priest, the perfect high priest. He not only broke down the wall of hostility that separated us from God, but he is now the only way to be reconciled back to the Father. And that's my question for you today. Have you been reconciled back to the Father? And how do you know that you've been reconciled back to him? Holiness is one of the things in our life that we can see that verifies something has happened. And to be clear, holiness is not something we work out or we work towards our salvation for, but it's the result of what happens to our life when we've been saved. Holiness is something that happens because a transformation has happened. And we all struggle with this. We all have times in our life where spending time communing with the Father seems difficult, yet we want his presence in our life. And we don't know what it is that's that's preventing us from spending that time. We intend what is right, but we avoid the lifestyle that will make it a reality. And so my encouragement to you today is to understand that part of the walk with Jesus, to honor what he endured for us, is discipline. There are going to be days that you struggle to spend time with him. But it's times like this when we read and go through what he experienced to reconcile us to the Father that helps to drive away the apathy we may experience, the feelings that cause us to say, I don't want to spend time in the Word today. And it helps us to kill those things and to go to the Father and to say, Father, I'm not in this, but help me to spend time with you. Because at the end of the day, treasuring Christ, that's what it's about. It's about treasuring Christ, and that only happens as we spend more and more time with him. So I hope that today helps just a little bit to feel the weight of what he endured for our redemption, but that it also encourages you and drives you more into time with him because of what he did for you. All right, guys, I love you. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in our next series.